Okay, here we are in a 2020 25G Momentum, camera strapped to forehead. Never done this, but I've had some people request that I video how this thing goes together. I've got a trailer behind me, as you can see, so I've got a bungee cord on my Toyhauler door to make sure it doesn't go back too far. Preparation was the biggest thing on this project. A lot of fear and trepidation in messing with three-season doors. The screen that came on this trailer cost $440 today, and it used to be right up here, and it had supports that went down this wall, and you can see the screws. I found a wood putty to fill in to try to kind of hide them. My thoughts on that is the three-season doors have a instruction manual on lci1.com under support documents, but they seem to be for the Generation 1 doors. They suggest you come in 1.5 inches from this frame to install your doors, which won't give you enough room for the toy door to close, cables to be in. So it's kind of like I measured on the newer 2021s, 2s, and they're in 5 inches, which is this blue tape. So the blue tape represents the front edge or the back edge of the toy door, down on the floor too. And then I've measured from that tape to the ceiling. That trim board is right at 5 inches in. Imagine that. Trying to decide if I should pull it out or leave it in. I'm thinking on leaving it in. I've also used a stud finder to determine how much metal I've got to deal with. Right about there. And it's the same all the way up, so there's my stud. So if I put my framing for the three-season doors on this edge, down to there, and up, and across, and down, I should have plenty of room into something to back into. It doesn't sound, but it definitely, it's detecting something in there, and it's all the way across. So I'm assuming there's metal behind there, I'm hoping. We'll find out in a minute. My plan is to install the three-season doors here, and then that's 5 inches in from here to here where the frame will be. And I'm actually thinking of reinstalling the roll-down shade, since no one seems to want to buy it. If I can put the framing for it in front of the door, possibly. After the door's in, I'll decide. But literally, then I could have the three-season doors closed and then pull down the screen, the bug screen, because a lot of people, one of their biggest complaints is bugs come right through the three-season doors. So since I've got it already, it's just a thought. Anyway, I'm going to try to turn this thing off and on as I progress, because there's no reason you guys are going to have to put up with all my Portuguese thinking. And we're back. Just wanted to make note that for my trailer, this entrance door side is a smidgen shorter than the other side, because the two pieces of metal that go on each wall are identical in length, but it must be down there at the floor, because I think the ceiling is square, but the floor isn't, the ramp. So one, I had to take out a chunk of that trim. Two, I had to take out a chunk of that trim so that the rail will fit flush up against the wall. And of course the piece on this side fell out because there was nothing holding it in. There was only one brad right here. So I will be doing that later. But here is the other side. And even with the trim in place, this fits just fine. I do have to notch the back brown trim piece and that bottom trim piece, but I don't have to cut the top trim piece to get it to fit. And as far as the top piece, it still will fit just fine. The rail that goes across the top of the ceiling over to that side, it's sitting right there. But anyway, that took about 40 minutes. Just trim that. Now on to the other side later. Oh, and I might add, the way I cut that molding is I used a drill bit, small, and I just drilled multiple holes. Then I used a tile knife to cut through. On the lower one, I just used the tile knife. There it goes. Now it's recording. Okay, update. I used a wood shim to stuff under there to keep it in place, and then I did pre-drill every hole because basically I sunk one screw right in the middle, that one, after I pre-drilled it, and then I made sure everything lined up. I've already removed my tape, but it lined up good. Then I very carefully pre-drilled a second hole further away and sunk that screw, and then I pre-drilled all of them. I don't know how many, I'm not going to count. I got quite a few down the wall. Oh, and after you sink the first screw, it's a 1-inch self-tapping screw. Make darn sure that it doesn't go through the wall on the outside before you sink all of them. And no, the 1-inch screw did fine. It's what came out of the previous screen, pull-down screen. So this guy across the top, that is not too easy. It actually fit in really tight. So once I got it across, I had pre-drilled the holes. I've got 3 because realistically that's not holding any weight, it's just holding itself up. So once I pre-drilled the 3 holes on the bar, then I put the bar up, wedged it in there. I did take the styrofoam header that's there and fit it up in there just to make sure it did slide up and slide across, and it did fine. And then of course I pre-drilled all of these the same as I did the other side, and used a shim on it too, and it did fine. I also noticed this is some really good sealant that they've got here. I don't know if you can see that on the camera, but it's it was laying there and I thought, what's that? So anyway, okay, I'm heading towards doing more, but as you can see, I kind of missed the trim on that one just a little. Hey, it's Portuguese work and I'm saving $1,000, so it's as good as it's going to get. And I also missed a little bit down there too. Let me tell you, that's the least of my worries. And this trim piece here will go in there once I get around to it. Okay, bye. Okay, back again. Tips and tricks. I used blue tape to hold that styrofoam block in place with a tab as I put this top rail in for the door. And for my pictures, this goes on the inside. Problem that I have, it's really hard to see. I can actually see through the camera better than the glare from the open door, but it's wedged. As you can see, don't make the mistake that I did by starting to push it up too early because it does scratch. I'm gonna have to repaint that, but So what happened is I had this bar over there almost up high enough. Now my camera quit working, but not fully high enough. So in other words, this end wasn't up high enough. It was sitting down here. And that's when I started over here trying to push this side up. It's got a little tab that fits inside of here, but it's wedged in there tighter and tight, and it's too tight. So one, the trailer is hot. It's getting warm outside and the sun's on it. So that definitely is going to expand it. So I'm fighting the expansion of the trailer, bringing the walls probably in a little bit. And two, I think that probably is going to have to be trimmed because it's just really tight. I could probably force it up there with a mallet, which I don't have. So the long of it is probably going to quit for the day because, hey, I'm retired. I don't have to do this for a living. But it's also not lining up on there because it's probably bowed. So that's going to be a trick. So tomorrow, come back when it's cold and probably trim this a little bit to get it to fit on one end. Okay, well, that's progress made. Okay, I'm back. First thing I wanted to say is I forgot my camera on the last day of construction, which is not good, but I'm going to try to walk you through, and with the steps that I give you, you should be in pretty good shape. First, I wanted to point out this picture. This is the top rail that supports the top of the doors that the hinge goes into. This tab right here is removable. Take 2 screws out from inside the track. That comes off. That was my cut. Because it was too long by 1/8 of an inch. I used a compound blade to cut through it because a steel for real metal saw blade for a 10-inch miter saw would have cost me 40 to 60 bucks. Compound blade costed me like 10 bucks. So it kind of melts the aluminum, but it worked good enough. So the end result, finished product, with the windows down, is that. I don't want to get ahead of myself because I know I will. So that picture that I showed you, I'm trying to find a tab here. Sorry, I got to hand hold this camera, so it's going to be a mess. That tab equated to this little box that I drew on a template. So this is the edge of that beam that I cut. This is the tab that stuck out. This is the bottom of the beam, top beam, and these 2 little holes match up to the 2 holes that were on that tab. I drew that before I put it back up again so that I knew where to sink my screws. And I'm going to need a flashlight. So let's see, where did I put it? Right here. So cutting that 1/8 inch off allowed me to get the beam across the top, and I think the camera's picking up those 2 screws, which is from the template. That's the bottom of the cardboard. That's the edge that I cut. You can see it's kind of melted right there, and that went in. That top bar right here is fastened in now with 5 screws. I had 3 when I shut the camera off. I added 2 more, and then that styrofoam block right there was a perfect size. I actually did not have to trim it at all. When I stuffed this up, top beam all the way up against the styrofoam, taped it in on each end, then I sized the door frame with the hinge frame in. The critical point is that that closes properly, that the top, all the way across the top, does not have huge gaps, between the door and the upper frame, and the bottom also. And that little slot there, you're not going to get away from because the fuzz just doesn't go far enough. Or maybe it does. I might have them over. So, trying to stay on track. The side rail went in first. Then the neighbor walks by, and I don't want to seem like I'm insane. Side rail went in first. Top rail went in second. Other side rail went in. Then this right here is the door hinge rail. It fits inside of the side rail, and the door hinge rail holds the door in place with a hinge, plastic hinge at top, plastic hinge at the bottom, and there's like a key slotted pin that fits in through there. That's on the plastic hinge that's attached to the door hinge rail. So the adjustment that you have is how far in do you allow the door hinge rail to be centered inward or outward, because as you can see, you can go from here all the way to here with it, but that gets your alignment and that gets your hinge, your door closure. So what I also did is I didn't know if I was going to be sinking the screw into the door hinge, so I can't hold two things at once. What I did is I made a template again that cutout notch on the edge of the door hinge rail is 3 1/8 inch, if I remember right, and that tells me that I still can sink a screw there and still hit the door hinge rail. So templates are a definite help. They tell you how much you've still got inside of the side rail of the door hinge rail. So what I did is I set everything up, tried it first, which is really a hardship. And then I sunk one screw in to see if it was going to be right. Okay, onward. The other issue that I ran into is the minute I tried to put this left door hinge rail inside of this side rail, the door fell out because the plastic hinge did not fit into the onto the door pin good enough. So I ended up pulling 2 screws at the top of the hinge. That's how you remove these doors, is you pull these 2 screws, little metal tab across that holds the slot in that's on the top of this door. So what I did is I pulled that. It fell out anyway, but then I cut a piece of cardboard to size to fit underneath the door pin that fits up into the slot of the hinge. Hello. And it was a shim. So I shimmed the top of the door pin to more be up into the door hinge, and that kept it in place when I was trying to fit the doors together. That fixed this side. So the only other thing that you do is once you get all your screws in, I did about every foot all down the side, and with that in place, sized properly, with the pin having the proper shim underneath it to keep it in the hinge, and then 2 screws down into the wood, which was very suspect. This is the screw right here. Hopefully you can see it. I sank 2 wood screws about 1.25 inches, thinking the floor would be 1 inch, and they went through like butter. It was like the rubber was the only thing there on both sides. So I'm wondering if that's rotten. I don't know. I'm going to see if they hold. I'm praying they do. But the gap was good. And again, this is 5 inch in from the door frame. I think you can see the door frame there. 5 inches from the back of that steel door frame, not counting the little filler thing, trim metal piece to the doors. Lined up really good. On to the right side. Right side had its own issues. The right side, as soon as I sunk those screws in, then literally the door over here fell out. It was in place, did not require a shim between the door pin on the top of the door frame to the hinge, but as soon as I sunk these screws in on the bottom, it lowered the frame because it was floating just a tiny bit. And again, the reason it's floating a tiny bit is my floor right side is about 1/8 of an inch plus lower on the right side than it is on the left side. Short story, the whole trailer is tweaked. If I don't want to get into this too much. If I use the level at the door, oops, I'm recording. If I use the level at the door and level at the entrance to this trailer, left and right, tire to tire first, then front to back, I call that good. Problem is when it's perfectly level, if you move the level to the back of the trailer and set it right there by those table holes, it's a half a bubble off in, let's say, one direction. The low on the door side, half a bubble. Then if you move into the bedroom and you put that same level down, and it's still dead level right there on the floor, but if you go into the bedroom and set it on the floor as far forward as you can, dead center, it's a half a bubble off too. The difference is it's a half a bubble off the wrong way, the other way. So I turned that in as a warranty issue, thought the frame was tweaked or weak. They stabilized it with the 4 stabilizers to a level point and said, see, it's fine, all of them are in that way. So I took it off as good. But we all know that the frames are definitely interesting. And in this case, the right side is lower than the left side. So what I did to fix that is, let's see, I had a shim out. Where did I put it? Here it is. I'm sorry. So what I did is I took a wooden shim. You can buy them at any hardware store. They're pine and they're wedged. Literally, I took that door and I shoved that shim in underneath it to raise it up enough, and then I drew on it, cut it to size after I pulled the screws back out, of course, and shimmed it. Then I did the same up here. That's a wooden shim, because you sink 2 screws from the door hinge up into the top rail, and all I did is I shimmed it down and on top, shimmed it up on the bottom, and that kept the door in place. The doors open totally fine, and I might as well show you. What I did do is I've read online that these doors bounce a lot. So I took a piece of styrofoam, cut it, and when it's in transport, that's how it rides. So literally the doors are solid in place. I'm trying to shake them right now and they can't. And so I'm going to open this. See, they do slide over the top of that. The other thing I wanted to point out is this. Sorry for my bed sheet. I'm trying to see if you can see that. The top rail has a metal tab on it. That's one, and that is what this latches into. I'm pulling on the cord that releases the latch, and that metal tab goes inside. Instructions don't tell you anything about that. The other thing I wanted to say is both doors hit. Come on, get the light on it. Will it shine? See that metal tab? That's that little tab right in front of my flashlight. Slides into a rack. A rail across the top of the door. There's a little rail. I know it's not going to pick up, but that rail goes on the outside. The metal shiny part goes on the inside, and that little tab fits into the rail, supports the door. It also hits. So in order to open the doors, because it hits right there, boy, that's bad lighting. You pull it down a little, and it's going to scratch, I'm sure, but then it opens. They also give you some wonderful nice stickers that you get to use a hairdryer to get off. The doors, I wanted to mention this, very confusing. You've got 3 tracks. You've got an inner track, a secondary track, and a third track. So there is a crossbar right here that is in the screen. It breaks the screen. It's not the track that you try to put the windows in. The first track you use is, well, actually it is, for the bottom, I'm sorry, is the track directly under the aluminum frame. And when I first put the first window in, I thought it was a mistake because it's got this gap all the way across. Well, the next window fits into the secondary track, and the secondary track slides up beyond the first window completely, overlapping it with about 1 inch. I'm not going to bother to show you because I couldn't hold on to the camera and do it. So literally, I think that's about it. The other thing I wanted to mention is there's no screws on the outside of this frame. It is all done inside. They're the only screws that you can access possibly from outside are those hinge screws, maybe, if you could get the door out of the way. So it is kind of nice. You can build these things from inside. I did not have the ramp down at all until I had to put the screws in on the bottom of the hinges and the top, which you have to have the door open to get to. Let's see if I can show you the hinge from here. There's the 2 screws into the rail. There is the metal facing inward, and I think that's it. So as far as bugs, yeah, there's gaps. See that gap? And then of course you saw the one at the bottom. So what I did is, if you've already got, put my flashlight down, if you've already got a screen, believe it or not, your screen track will fit right there. There's screws down the side. So I literally, hard to reach, I kept my screen. You know, if I close those doors, let's see if I can still get in. So again, it hits at the top, pull down a little, it slides, it latches, and then the screen So if I'm in an area that it is extremely buggy, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to make use of that screen. I tried to sell it. Nobody seemed to want it. They cost $400, $440 still online, and from the big company that makes them. And I just said, hey, couldn't sell it for $95 or best offer, so there it is, still in place. Patio door says patio door on the outside. Tracks are right there, and then there's a rail right where my finger is. That's the rail that this tab goes into that hits the top of the door frame. The joy is it turned out with zero gap. It's just the fuzz that's hitting on the bottom. And yeah, it's kind of tough to get it over that styrofoam purposefully. And that's it. I hope this helps someone. Again, 5 inches in, critical point. That side rail, the first side rail that you put in, where my finger is, to the back of this frame is 5 inches, not this trim tab. And the manual says 1.5 inches. Don't believe it. The manual online from lci.com is for, I believe, a Gen 1 door that probably did not have a patio kit. As you can see, the diagram they show doesn't have a patio kit. And they say to go 1.5 inch in. And they also don't tell you which side the metal trim tab is. and they really don't tell you how to put it together very well. So it is there for your reference. Good luck. As far as experience to install, it took me about 6 hours, and it was harder than I expected because of the shimming involved and the thinking required to get the shimming done. The cardboard on top of the left door was definitely interesting. My wife actually came up with that idea. She said, well, can we raise that? I'm like, yeah, shim it. So as far as a hardship level to do on a level of 1 to 10, I was thinking it would be about a 5. I'd call it about a 7 or an 8. So if you're really not mechanically inclined, let somebody else do it. You've got a whole lot more information than I had when I started. So I hope it helps someone. Have a great day. Bye-bye.